All right, welcome back to the Pair Program. I am your host, Tim Winkler, again joined by a familiar face, Sean Leahy. Sean, thanks again for tagging along with me on this one, man.
Stoked to be here, Tim. Got some great guests today, and excited to be here.
Yeah, you're slowly locking in that permanent spot. We'll see how this one goes.
You know, it's all about getting the good reviews from the guests. Last time, Alex and Austin gave me some pretty good reviews. So hopefully the gents today will give me high marks as well.
Yeah, we'll have to ask at the end.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
We typically start with a little bit of random banter, and so I was recently reading that Amazon and Walmart are doubling down on drone delivery. So the FAA just opened up the rules so that drones can fly beyond line of sight, which means, looking at millions of more homes. They're going to be getting groceries kind of airdropped to their homes. So I was going to ask you, Sean, do you think like rural America is ready for that? Do you think Winchester is ready for that?
Okay, so there's going to be some incidents. I'll say that right off the bat. There's going to be a learning curve for some of the folks who have, let's say, a rich skeet shooting hobby. They might take some liberties with the first incoming drones.
Right.
But no, I think it's going to be great. If they can help me get some new parts for my F-150, I'm all about it. So send them on over.
Yeah, I was going to say, not far from like hunting permits being issued out that way for taking down a drone that's got some eggs when the next shortage hits. Andy, you might even have some like buzzing over there to drop some FPV drone parts to the team at Vector at some point.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Good stuff. All right, so let's jump in to a little opener on today's episode. So we're going to be talking about a topic that is urgent, inspiring, and it's centered around what it means to build a mission-driven startup at a time when America's national security is demanding more from industry than ever before. So we're going to be going deep on, this concept of what happens when you fuse these elite operators with advanced manufacturing, a culture that kind of boasts, no egos, and ask, what kind of people truly thrive inside a company that treats its work as a national duty. And so I'm excited to jump into this important topic. We've got some excellent guests joining us today. So we've got Andy Yakulis, CEO and co-founder of Vector. He spent nearly 2 decades as an Army officer and special operations commander. Has worked at the intersection of defense innovation, private capital, and now is leading Vector's charge to build tools and technologies for modern warfare. And then alongside Andy, we've got Larsen Jensen. Larsen's I have to open with it, a former 2-time Olympic medalist, Navy SEAL, Stanford MBA, and serves as the founder and general partner at Harpoon Ventures. Larsen was instrumental in bringing some of Vector's founding team together as well, and is going to bring some solid energy to the topic of building companies with mission at their core. So, Andy and Larsen, thank you both for joining us on the episode.
Thanks for having us. We're super stoked to be here.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Larsen's the type of guy that you don't want to tell your mom about because you always feel like you're not good enough, and she always gives you that look when you tell people about Larsen. So yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Larsen, I caught a little bit of your episode with Mike Ritland as well. That was a good one, man.
Thank you. That was my first long form. You never really know how it's going to go when you're in the studio for 4 hours straight. One of my investors in our venture fund said, was this an interview or was this an interrogation? Was this like and so you're on the receiving end this time, and it was great, and I appreciate the compliment. It was a lot of fun.
I liked his icebreaker of, have you seen Michael Phelps in the shower? That was
he didn't prepare me for that one. He's like, he
just came out hot.
Came in hot. I think my response was as good as I could have.
It was good. I was
ready for it.
It was good. You held your own. All right, cool. Well, before we jump into the main discussion, we like to loosen things up with a little icebreaker we call Pair Me Up. Everyone just goes around the room, rattles off 2 things that just kind of go together. Sean, why don't you lead us off and then I'll follow.
Well, Tim, that a lot of my Pair Me Ups have been inspired by my recent move out here to Winchester. And last weekend, I was finally getting totally unpacked, all the last items. So I was hanging up a bunch of art, photographs, that kind of stuff. So my pair for today is a measuring tape and a level. Always want to be walking around with those if you're doing some work around the house. They tend to not go together. You forget one and then realize you need it. But if you're doing some of that handyman stuff at home, measuring tape and a level.
I was going to compliment those. Those posters in the back are perfectly symmetrical, man.
That's just a lot of the AI video filters. Those are also completely, totally original Kandinskis as well. Definitely not prints. But thank you. It's perfect over here.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Nothing like more obnoxious than looking at a piece of art that's just like a little bit crooked.
It's sideways. It looks like you hung it blindfolded. So
right,
yeah, go the extra mile. Bring the level.
I dig it. All right, good stuff. I'll jump in real quick. So I had an annual physical yesterday, and was tempted to go with the physicals in that awkward hernia check moment where you drop trowel and cough, but I'll spare the listeners that visual, and I'm going to jump and go with fasting and a renewed appreciation for black coffee. So obviously, went and got some blood work done. Foolishly had it scheduled, later in the afternoon. So had to do a little bit more longer fasting than I had intended to. So I found myself kind of like romanticizing, anything that you're allowed to consume. And black coffee was that for me. So it just became a moment of gratitude for, drinking black coffee. And so I'm going to take the fasting and that renewed appreciation for black coffee as the pairing.
Do you think you'll step up to bulletproof coffee, Tim?
Bulletproof, maybe a Black Rifle. Who knows? We'll see. Let's pass it over to the guest at this point. So Andy, maybe a quick intro and your pairing.
Sure. So just like you said, CEO and co-founder of Vector, spent a career in the military, did about 18 years, and a little story there of why I left at 18 years. Had a fortunate opportunity of serving in special operations, about 10 of that. Co-founded a separate company prior to Vector in the health tech space of all things, and now all in on Vector right now. For my pairing, I have to say at the start, I was pretty scared where that story was going to go, Tim, and I'm happy it ended at black coffee. Just maybe to keep with the theme of some personal scary stories, just moved to Salt Lake City here with the company over the last few months. Moving a lot of moving boxes right now. And there's nothing better after like doing a lot of manual labor than getting like a Corona in the shower and just having a beer in the shower. So I'll say beer in the shower is my pairing.
Shower beers. I dig it. Yeah. And a Corona.
I've had a shower beer since college. So I'm glad that somebody's having a good time.
I had one last week, man. It's you don't it kind of brings you back to college.
Yeah. It looks like it's been a while since your last shower. So
I'm usually just a Coors Light can in the shower, no koozie, just kind of keeping it, exposed. But Corona is you going lime in the shower too with that?
I'm not that fancy. Just
straight Corona.
Yeah. I guess it's dangerous though. You think about like glass in the shower.
That's why I go can. Yeah, you never know. Just Good stuff. When did you officially, get relocated over to Salt Lake?
I've been here roughly since April, but brought the family down once school was out. So just this summer, started the summer, brought the family down, and just finally got moved in over the last couple of weeks.
Nice, man. Yeah, love it out there. I even rocked the High West hat just in lieu of the great state of Utah. So excited to hear more about that as part of this theme of the conversation. But let's pass it over to the co-guest, Larsen. Quick intro on your pairing.
No, I appreciate it. I think, I really appreciate the kind intro that you gave earlier, but I've been fortunate to represent our country across the playing field, the battlefield, and now in the world of venture capital and startups. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart, is representing the United States of America and our national interests and whatever career field that might be. And so I'm really happy now to continue that spirit of service with our venture firm and also with the team here at Vector. And it's an honor, a privilege to be here with you and to help share some of that story. On a lighter note, into the pairings, I actually recently did a fast as well. I told Andy about it. He thought I was crazy, but I think I'm going to get him to do it. I did the 5-day Prolon fast. You can look it up, PRLOAN, or maybe it's ON. I know it's AN. And it's 5 days. It's, 600 calories a day for 5 days straight. A little bit brutal, towards the end of that. But my wife challenged me to it. And so I definitely empathize with you at the end of that. It goes from Monday to Friday. On Saturday morning, I woke up early, got the kids out of bed before they were even awake. And we went down to the local diner and loaded up on waffles and everything I could possibly eat. Not exactly as prescribed, but I was starving. But from a pairing standpoint for me, I'd have to say Hawaiian pizza and a Mai Tai. That is my pairing. I think you cannot go wrong with that. And if you can, there's something wrong with you. It's my favorite.
Damn, that sounds good. Sounds like
that's why I had to fast. I did that for like 2 weeks.
I was going to say, man.
It makes more sense. Like there's some logic behind this.
That's an amazing pairing. We oftentimes will get pairings of the great debate of, is pineapple and ham belong together? And it's a no brainer. Come on. It's delicious. It's fantastic. And I'll say, I feel like a little bitch now that, you did 5 days and I did 8 hours or 9 hours of my fast.
8 hours? Dude, you just took a nap. You went to sleep.
Yeah. I was sitting here. I got the itch of going, scratches and now it's one of those things I'm sure the longer you prolong it, the more gratitude you have and the better you kind of feel. But 5 days, that's aggressive. I'll check it out. Keep you posted if we experiment with that.
Let's do it.
All right, good stuff, man. We'll wrap up on the Pair Me Up segment and jump into the heart of today's conversation. And so, as I mentioned, we want to talk about what it means to build a mission-driven startup here in the U.S. At a time when our defense industrial base needs rebuilding locally and urgently. And Andy, I want to kind of start with you. So maybe first explain to our listeners, what it is you all are building at Vector, the mission, and why now was the moment that you all decided was essential to launch this business.
We built Vector. I mean, we founded Vector, and we'll tell the founding story maybe later here. But Larsen is my co-founder. He's my initial investor, and so we came up with this idea together early last year. We saw warfare changing on the battlefields of Ukraine, on the northern border of Israel and in Gaza. And we saw technology being used in ways never seen before. We saw the rate and pace of technology being used in ways never seen before. And the conversations that we were having last year is, well, if technology is changing the battlefield, we probably need a new model of how we provide that technology to the warfighter. That required a new type of company. And so we call Vector Modern Warfare as a service. The technology we're providing is as a service. We're very much in the drone space right now. Every drone we have built and sold to the United States military has actually been underneath the service contract. And so that is what we are trying to do. We're trying to break down barriers of siloed technology. We're trying to integrate a lot of great technology together. But really, we are trying to ensure our warfighters have relevant technology today. When I was in the Army, we used to say, we give our soldiers yesterday's technology tomorrow. And that used to kind of get a laugh around certain circles, but it's not funny anymore. It's now a national security vulnerability that we do have outdated technology. And we created Vector to streamline a series of different things. Right now it's in the drone space and a little bit of autonomy on the drones, but it's to streamline that technology to warfighters so they have it today and then we refresh it for them as a service.
If I could add on that a little bit, piggybacking on the things that Andy said, we both spent time. He spent a whole career essentially in the special operations world. Me, a couple deployments. So very fortunate to have served alongside our nation's bravest, who volunteer not only for military service, but to go into harm's way, full well knowing they might not come home. And that is something that I think is one of the noblest things that a person can do, is to actually go into harm's way in defense of their country, in defense of their brothers and sisters in arms. And, what we saw essentially happening through the GWAT era and what's changed now with technology coming into the battlefield at such a rapid clip is that, frankly, we didn't believe that our own military was ready with the pace of change of what was inevitably going to come. And so if we didn't do something about it, like a whole of nation approach, our part of that is as a company, as an investors, to help modernize our capability to keep our bravest warriors safe in the times of the greatest consequence, that we're not fulfilling our duty to our nation. Fortunately, many in the department and many around the country see this. still, as they say, it's difficult to turn an aircraft carrier quickly. And the aircraft carrier in this example is our government procurement processes, our requirements processes, how we think about reshaping our technology needs as a country to keep our bravest warriors safe if and when they're called upon. There needs to be more that's done. And I think that we're proud to do our small part of that from our side of the table as a company, trying to deliver on that more quickly.
Yeah, well said. And, obviously China controlling, over 80% of global commercial drone production, right? Obviously a huge growing concern for the US. And Vector doing this in the US, doing it, in the middle of our country here in Utah. I wanted to make sure I asked about that. You could have built this company anywhere. Why bet on Utah? And talk to me a little bit about what that ecosystem looks like, maybe the next 5 years out, if Vector succeeds.
I don't think there's an if Vector succeeds, Tim. So maybe we'll start there. But we're going to build the next great defense technology company here in Utah. We chose Utah for a variety of reasons. When we started the company last year, I had just finished my service in the Army, was in Northern Virginia, and we took a long sort of look on where does it make sense for a variety of reasons, tech talent, access, et cetera, of where to put a company. And there's really 3, maybe 4 locations that I thought made sense. The obvious, if you're going to create a venture-backed company, Bay Area. If you're going to create a defense tech company, El Segundo is very popular for the defense tech community right now. Austin, Texas has emerged as a hotbed for a lot of defense tech companies, and there's a strong investment ecosystem down there as well. And then you have Utah. We call Utah Silicon Slopes. Once I started digging in a little bit more to Utah and looking at the advantages for being a small business here, the amount of tech talent that is here, there's a lot of very well-known tech companies and data centers that have a strong presence here in Utah. It's a state that's very easy to get in and out of. There's an amazing Delta Airlines hub here at the Salt Lake City airport. And when you're talking to people about quitting their job, joining you on this crazy startup journey and moving their entire family, Utah's an easy sell. We have relocated, I think at this point, 25 to 30 people to the state of Utah, myself and my family included, and we're very proud of that. It is hard to, get people to quit their jobs and to jump on a startup journey with you. Bringing them to Utah and being a little bit different, being a little bit of contrarian from the rest of the ecosystem that goes to El Segundo or Austin, Texas, helps a lot. We've got a very tight-knit community here in Utah. Vector is a very tight-knit community here. What I think you'll see is you don't have this kind of rotational migration from startup to startup of individuals that you see in the Bay Area. And let's not throw shade on the Bay Area, but we kind of wanted to be outside of that, a little bit different than the rest. And so far, so great. Utah has just been fantastic to us.
Yeah, in our discovery call, you talked about that, that feeling of weight, relocating families to get behind this mission, right? And that level of service that you need to now provide to make sure this company is going to succeed and provide for these families that are relocating. It's also interesting to me as well as folks coming in, full time, 5 days a week, right? This is very different than what we've seen over the last couple of years with remote first culture. And so, obviously a manufacturing piece playing into that, but talk to me a little bit about, relocating that many people and that kind of trend that you're seeing that folks are getting behind that mission from the conversations that you've had with folks. What is it that you're seeing that maybe from a values perspective that they're getting behind and what kind of enforces that, across the team on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, we still have some hybrid remote employees. We're having a lot of discussions right now about where does it make sense to have people that are hybrid remote and when do they come here? I'll just say it off the top. I do not believe in remote work. I believe everyone needs to be in person 5 days a week. The energy you feel when you're working with somebody in close proximity, you just cannot replicate on any sort of medium otherwise. The serendipitous conversations, especially when you're in the hardware space, and we have a software component to the company as well, but in the hardware space, it's a no-brainer. You have to be in person. But even for those folks that are in business operations roles and other roles, having them see the fruits of their labor, so to speak, where they're working on a quote or they're working on something in the back shop, and they see why they're working to do that. They see that drone being built and being shipped out to the warfighter. I think you just create this synergy and you create this energy and this motivation that you can't replicate in any other capacity other than being in person. And so we'll always strive to have as many employees as possible here in person in our Salt Lake City offices. At times, you might have a hybrid remote worker, if that makes sense. And we're always opportunistic in how we approach that. But for the most part, we try to get everyone in the office every day.
I think I'd love to jump on a couple of things Andy said there, and I think they relate, like the in-person culture, why Salt Lake City, Utah, and sort of like our former backgrounds. And on the Salt Lake City, Utah space, I think it really attracts the type of talent and sort of the ethos of the people that Vector's trying to hire. And when you think of elite special operators, a lot of times post-career, they're interested in going to a mountain town. I don't necessarily know why, other than they like to be in the outdoors. I mean, that's all of our training is outdoors and rugged environments, effectively. And that type of person enjoys mountain biking, skiing, hiking, seeing something scenic, and they love doing that and sharing that with their family as well. I also think that the industries and the technologists that Vector's done a great job of recruiting enjoy that outdoors as well. Some of which are actually extreme athletes themselves. And I think the industry broadly attracts sort of like these extreme athletes, sort of like X Games style folks in sort of like the unmanned systems career field broadly. So I think that interestingly, if you look at what those folks are attracted to, Salt Lake City is a great candidate to attract that type of talent. And then beyond that, on the concept of in-person work, I think we all lived through this social experiment of COVID. We're all locked down and we all got through it, needless to say. And businesses emerged somewhat fine. But if you just think back to any other career field, at least in my case, what if we had virtual swimming competitions where I just did my time and I put it up on a chat box. It's like and nobody actually went in person to a race and got to compete against each other. I doubt that we'd have the amount of world records dropping like we do when we go to the Olympic Games or something like that. There's something with that in-person camaraderie, that in-person competition that brings out the best in people. And I think that's something you just cannot replicate virtually. And the same thing can be said in the special operations community. The tightest bonds happen by sharing very difficult experiences with people and going through a lot together. And you really can't feel like that the same way as if you're speaking to an avatar or in a chat box. Like, sure, you can still do certain tasks. There is some work from home aspect that people can do. There's some administrative things. But if you're going to be on a shared mission together, you need to share physical proximity.
Maybe just to tell a quick story about the type of people we hire and why they like Salt Lake City. So former special operator, works for the company. He's in the Navy SEAL community prior to joining Vector. And there's an 11,000 foot peak, maybe, I don't know, about 10-ish miles to the east of our offices. And so before work, he climbed the peak and he parachuted down to the parking lot. Like, I wish I could say I was joking. No, that's literally what he did. And that's why the type of guys I hire like this ecosystem. And, on the other side of that, because we hire a lot of drone racing league pilots, there's this great drone community here. Yeah. And a lot of my guys build and fly drones throughout the course of the day as they're test flying. And then on the weekend, they go out to the desert, the West Desert, and they do drone races and fly drones on the weekend. And so it's a very sort of like, there's a lot here in Utah if you're a former special operator and you want to parachute into work, or if you would just want to fly drones either during the week or on the weekend as well. A lot here. You can't do that just to like Larsen said.
Yeah, you're not parachuting into work and not getting arrested at San Francisco.
Yeah, that's not going to work outside of DC either.
Yeah.
So that's amazing, man. I love those types of stories. And, just as somebody who's, talked to a lot of individuals from a talent perspective over the last few years, there's no doubt you see it from the parents too, where it is super difficult to work 5 days remote, when a lot of times, the kids are either also at home or, coming back home from school early or whatever it might be. The number of conversations I've had with parents like, oh, I would love to go in the office 5 days a week at this point, because they've truly just kind of experienced the complete opposite, and they maybe thought the grass was greener, but it's a bit distracting as well. So getting into the space and staying focused, I think is pretty ideal. I want to talk about kind of building this mission-driven culture, and it's this interesting blend that you all have, where you're bringing together special ops folks and talented folks that are hardware, software engineers, manufacturing individuals. Not all of these folks are former military. So how do you kind of bring that culture together? How do you unify that? And what's the secret to maybe building trust and that collaboration across some of these different backgrounds?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so we're just under half prior military or government civilian. So we're mostly non-military, but we have a very rigorous hiring process, a very unique hiring process. Tim, you know this. And I think as they go through that process, through a series of interviews, a little bit of a technical evaluation, and some other unique things we do at the end there, just to make sure that we're finding the right people that not just have like the technical competencies, but are good mutual culture fit. And I think through that hiring process, people will self-select out, and that happens at times. And I think that's okay. I'd rather them self-select out through that process than to get them on board, move them into Utah, and then figure out it's not a good fit. And so we try to be very efficient with our time and get people through the process, but we still aren't shooting from the hip here when we're trying to bring people on board. We kind of hinted at it here a little bit, but so we hire a lot of former special operators, a lot of former prior military folks that have some sort of tactical experience, especially in the drone space. And then we pair them with a lot of drone racing league or drone manufacturers to do a variety of different things, mostly on service contracts. What we have agreed upon with our engineering team is that this is what we call a warfighter-led company, meaning, Larsen and I, both former warfighters. Our other co-founder, Matt, is a former warfighter. And then our fourth co-founder, George, never served in the military and is representing the leadership team as a non-military engineer. And George still has very much a leadership role and leads as our chief technology officer. But the products that we are building, the approach we're taking to product development, the approach we're taking to how we instruct service members how to incorporate drones, the warfighting capability, that is always led by a former military service member, usually a former special operator service member. And having that warfighter-led approach, I think, has given us an advantage to kind of meet our customer, which for right now is the entire United States military, meet them where they have their needs, build for them, build for what I wish I had when I was in special operations, build for what Matt and Larsen wish they had when they were in special operations. So having that warfighter-led approach and being very, very upfront and direct with our engineers that, hey, we want your input, we want your talent, but at the end of the day, we are building for a very specific customer, and that's the American warfighter.
I think the important thing to add on to what he was mentioning is that what your listeners may not know is that in the special operations community, you have the operators, but you have a whole host of enablers, many of which are technologists in their own domains. And so, even on sort of like what we'd call the vanilla side, so like the regular SEAL teams of which I was a part, to say nothing of the tier 1 units, like there's a huge host of that where actually it's almost the same thing as Vector in many ways, maybe skewed differently by headcount, but still sort of like operator-led, mission-centric. There's people that are going outside the wire in those special operations community, like enabled by, technologists to actually prosecute the job and make sure that things get done appropriately. And so I think that we're fortunate that in our former communities, that was already the DNA of the organization, is like serving that higher calling, that team first mentality, that mission first mentality, but also supported by people that actually made sure that the technology worked and was operable when it was needed. And I think that's sort of the same thing when you think about it with this technology company being Vector, maybe skews heavier by headcount on the tech side than sort of like the operator side, but still the same dynamics exist in terms of that balance of the technology experts and the people that are actually going to be utilizing it if and when called upon.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time later in my career in the defense innovation space, and I would see a lot of engineering-led companies that would pitch products to the Defense Department, and it's like the warfighter doesn't need that. They don't want that. They're never going to use that. And I remember the same thing when I was in the military, seeing companies come to us and they would bring sort of like novelty devices or something that would never work in a sandy, hot, or super cold environment. And when we started Vector, we wanted to make sure that that never happened. As former, military service members, but also through our very unique as a service model, we're so far embedded with our customer base, with our end users, that's never a problem. We're never building something that they don't want. In fact, we're iterating on the design of what we are building with our customers on a service contract. And I think that's a lot of the magic behind Vector is we will never build something that we haven't already talked to the military about, 1,000 times over and iterate on the design for them. And a lot of the products that you're seeing come out of Vector have been gone through that process of iterative design with our end users, our military service members, while on service contracts.
And I think that's one of the distinctions also, putting my investor hat on for a second, that, one of the things that most excites me about what Vector is doing, most of the, modern defense technology companies, they're very smart and they're brilliant engineers and they're doing a great job. I'm very proud of the broader ecosystem we have in America and what's happening. But at the same time, the unique aspect, or one of the unique aspects about Vector is not only do you know what the customer wants, you sort of like have been the end user in those harshest environments. And you might even know, many people on the team know astronomically more than the best informed people inside of the United States government right now in terms of where the puck is going. They've literally lived it because they've experienced it. They've experienced what it's like to see how technology reshapes, how we project military power. They've seen it firsthand. They've experienced it firsthand. They know the potential consequences because they've been through it. And it's like anything else in life. You can read as many books about something as you'd like, and you are notionally an academic expert in the topic. But I can read as many books as I want about going through BUDS and going through Hell Week. Until you've gone through Hell Week or a 5-day fast or whatever, you don't really know what it's sort of like until you go through that. And I think that's one of the fortunate things about the team that we have here is they've literally been through it. So there's not really much guesswork in terms of what's actually practically going to be utilized.
I don't know who we're under on 36 minutes on when the Hell Week BUDS conversation came up. But
I'm here to talk about a new book that I'm writing.
Let's hear it. Let's get the plug.
In the SEAL community, it's like, when who's going to write the next book? Now I have it. Probably getting me into hot water. All the books have been written. Now we run for Congress. So that's the new. The books are done.
Are you announcing your political ambitions
campaign
here on the podcast right now?
Fortunately, I don't want to read a book or read. I don't want to write a book. Nor do I want to run for Congress. I'm happy just doing what we're doing.
So, Larsen, Andy, you brought up an interesting topic here about looking at not just the business side of defense tech, leading with mission, but I think there's a fundamental difference between doing defense and security-related work and traditional commercial work, where in commercial work, you're interested in customer tastes and customer needs. When you're talking about national security and defense business, you're really talking about larger scale international geopolitics, security concerns, that kind of thing. But that's fundamental to your business. So how do you, as business leaders, view the world through that lens? How do you monitor? How do you forecast the changing environments geopolitically and from a security perspective that are, again, eventually going to filter down to the day-to-day business decisions you make?
Yeah, let me just start by saying, if you are not paying attention to geopolitics, if you are not just a massive consumer of what is happening all over the world, especially like my position, and I'm guessing your position as well on the investor side, you are sorely missing out. And so I spent a good amount of my time trying to keep up, especially now it's very hard to keep up with. So you spend a lot of time trying to keep up with what is happening with NATO, what is happening in the Pacific, what is this latest tariff deal that the president just signed with Japan? How does it impact things for our business, and how is that going to trickle down? And so just trying to keep up with that at our level is a lot of what I spend some of my time doing. And so that's also part of the reason why I love building in defense is you can see geopolitics. You can see a conversation between, Trump just met with Putin in Alaska, and how that trickles down to maybe a conversation with Zelensky here. How does that trickle down to our startup? And I love being able to trace that line from, the most senior leaders of the most powerful countries in the world, all the way down to how does that impact our startup for how we're approaching our business and who we're now going to spend a little more time talking to and doing business development with. And so I love defense tech for a variety of reasons. That is one of many. But Larsen's used the term, we're always trying to figure out where's the puck going. You are missing out in defense if you're building for the now, if you're building where the puck is. And a lot of it is trying to read tea leaves. A lot of it is using a lot of pattern recognition to see how different world events play into how does that lead into appropriations language in the next bill from Congress, and then how does that trickle down to what programs are going to get funded. And so there's a little bit of gamesmanship here. There's a little bit of strategy here. It's a lot of reading tea leaves to try to figure out what makes the most sense and what should I build towards next? And then how can I influence that program? How can I influence that requirement to make it where it makes a lot of sense for maybe Vector to win on that contract in the future? And then running that cycle again and again throughout the process, sometimes almost like on a weekly basis, as world events just are changing so fast right now, is a challenge to keep up with. But again, I think that's a lot of the passion and fun that comes with doing what we're doing.
There's an old saying that, being too early or being too late is indistinguishable from being wrong. And so as you think about starting a company or investing in a company, market timing and macro sentiment play into it massively. Many companies that now have reached very significant success were actually tried during the dot-com era, as an example. Now they're successful. We joked around about grocery delivery right now, and we had Webvan in 2000 and just didn't work, right? We didn't have sort of enough consumers online, didn't have economies of scale, all of that. And now we have, Amazon grocery delivery and other services. And so in many ways, there's almost no new ideas, broadly. There are some, but timing is just such a huge factor that's, a factor in success over time. I think the collision that we saw right now is the collision of deglobalization, as that relates to national security specifically, and emerging technology and commercial electronics that have achieved such scale and volumes that they're actually extremely affordable now. So on the technology side, you have capabilities now that are possible at a fraction of the cost, let's just say hundreds of dollars from what you could you couldn't even do 10 years ago, period, almost at any cost. It cost you $100,000 to do that. So the price curve has fallen to such a point where now you actually have, as Uncle Sam has put out many, many times, the opportunity for attritable systems in mass, right? So meaning systems that are so, so cost conscious that you can produce so many of them and reshape the landscape of the battlefield and deterrence before so, hopefully. On the other hand, when you think about deglobalization as a trend, obviously, there's a huge trend politically towards more sovereignty, whether that be European sovereignty, American sovereignty, as it relates to our supply chain. We don't want to be reliant on China, but also on our force projection. We served in an area during the global, global war on terror, meaning around the entire world. For those that don't know what that means, everywhere, all at once, all the time. I don't think that under the Trump administration and even during the Biden administration, we wanted to fight a global scale conflict anymore. And it's become more, polarizing in terms of China, Russia, et cetera, the United States, back to sort of like the great powers. And so as we think about what happens in the other areas where the United States has had people on the ground providing security and stability for commerce to occur, for perhaps democratic elections to occur, there's sort of an argument right now to say, well, is there potentially going to be less stability in some of those regions if the United States is no longer prosecuting a global war on extremist terrorism? And so as all these things convene, we saw that and read the tea leaves, as Andy so eloquently put, to say, okay, all of these factors are colliding right here, right now. It's still possible we're too early, but I don't think so. I think we're right on time for this thesis. And I don't think that this thesis probably would have worked 10 years ago because the cost curve wasn't there, deglobalization wasn't there. And now all of these factors are coming to fruition right now. And we're starting to see them play out in policy from, both from Secretary Hegseth all the way up to the Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, are instituting these things at a very, very rapid clip. And so I'm net bullish on the policies that our country is instituting, because they clearly see a lot of the same things that we're seeing given our prior experience.
This concept of timing and starting a mission-driven company when you start that company is, I think, really, really important. Larsen and I had 1,000 conversations about Vector spring of last year, just like countless hours on the phone trying to figure out this concept of Vector. But then we started talking about the timing and when do we go? And so this is summer of 24, a year ago. I'm at my 18th year in the Army, and I think most people probably understand that, like, most sane people go to 20 years. But we're having conversations about, like, I think we can't wait 2 more years if you want to do this thing, Andy. And we made a decision, Larsen and I made a decision, my wife and I made a decision that the timing kind of makes sense to go now, meaning I had to get out of the Army to go all in on Vector and run Vector full time. And that's the decision I made. When we started Vector, like winter of last year or early winter of this year, I thought we were too late and I thought we missed it. And then I started realizing, no, like, we're actually maybe a hair early, or we're catching this thing on the upswing. And then we saw all these new legislation and executive orders and memos from the Secretary of Defense come out about drone dominance. And it's like, okay, now we know we're hitting this thing right on time. There's a little bit of luck involved there, if I'm being honest, but that's a lot of experience on Larsen's side, on an investor seeing a lot of different companies. There's a lot of experience on my side, being in the military for so long and seeing defense acquisitions and seeing a lot of things change. Both of us watching and bringing in Matt Long, our co-founder, and he had a lot of experience overseas in Eastern Europe, and seeing how warfare has changed. All of this sort of came together for us last year. We realized the time to go was now. And I think that's a lot of where, like, this mission and purpose and passion comes from. It's like, we know the time is now, but we have to aggressively pursue it fast. And that is part of the reason why Vector moves so fast. Is we're right where we need to be, but we cannot allow time to pass us by. We have to build fast.
So staying on the subject of timing, then this is kind of for Larsen, just because of your background with Harpoon and investing. We've seen over the past couple of years this renewed private capital interest in defense and dual use. Part of that spurred by, efforts like DIU, Office of Strategic Capital, et cetera. Where do you think private capital is right now for defense and dual use? Is it still in the upswing? Are investors looking for returns?
Think it's on the upswing. And I think what's really interesting about it is, like, in a very short period of time since we started Harpoon, our venture capital firm, to say night and day is an under exaggeration of what we've seen. When I was originally starting to invest in the space, actually at another firm called Lightspeed, I helped to do one of the first counter UAS deals in existence in the startup space. And that was an example of perhaps being too early. And the company ended up selling. It was a reasonable outcome for the company, a reasonable outcome for investors. But ultimately, and that was when we started to see some early indications during the ISIS fight, and also some early concerns from critical infrastructure that we're going to have drone incursions, and this is a risk that we need to mitigate. But at the time, it was like far from being front page of the journal. It was not front page news. It was sort of like page 10 or something like that. And then all of a sudden, with what we've seen, and I think what's going to go down in it as drone war 1 in Ukraine. Like, now there is, thousands of counter UAS solutions of different form factors and types. Whereas at the time that we did this deal, there was 2, maybe 3. And so I think that we were arguably too early there and ultimately sold too early. And if that company was still around, I think it would be probably almost a $5 or $10 billion business today. So I think it's really interesting, but also culturally, back then, it was very faux pas to build for the national interest of the United States in Silicon Valley, particularly. And in many cases, we built our whole franchise and a whole firm around that we thought that technologists should work on some of the hardest, audacious problems. And if they're building something that's in the best interest of our country, what better way to dedicate your talents as an engineer, as a technologist, to build something that's better for the citizenry, whether that be in terms of our prosperity or our security. Both, I think, are synonymous in my opinion. So whether that be in national security defense or homeland security or Department of Energy or supply chain, really making sure that our populace is prepared for a future of abundance and greater security is why we started our firm. And when we started it, we found some fringe believers, in terms of that thesis, but it was not mainstream. Now, all of a sudden, in the past 2, maybe 3 years, it's become a mainstream consensus viewpoint across the technology industry. Young founders that I can't even keep up with the volume of young founders that are interested in building technologies that are in the best interest of the United States. And I've, as a result of that, never been more inspired. It feels like going back into the military again, where you're around a group of like-minded people that want to dedicate their lives to something that's bigger than themselves. I think that's what's happening in the technology ecosystem right now. And at least for me, and I imagine for founders out there as well, it makes it so much easier to get out of bed every day when you're not thinking about the things that you're going through individually. You're serving a higher purpose. You're trying to serve your people of your country, trying to protect them, trying to help them live a better life in the future. I think that you couldn't ask for a better dynamic in the ecosystem right now.
Yeah, well said. I wanted to quickly just loop back, Andy, on the concept of Vector just running extremely fast and growing incredibly quickly. There's some oftentimes we've seen there's issues with maybe talent retention or attrition when sometimes you're scaling so quickly and you're bringing folks in, and sometimes founders are just overlooking some things. But you've pointed out, and we've seen it firsthand as well, that you have a very specific kind of process, and you also have some very specific kind of core values that you all kind of live by at Vector. I wanted to hone in on those values because I think values-based recruiting is kind of run synonymous with kind of like mission-driven culture as well. What are some of those values, and how are you going about the vetting out of individuals based on how they fit in with alignment with those values?
So we have 3 core values, and you never do more than 3 things because people won't remember them. And you always try to come up with a good acronym. So we talk about REP. So our first value is be relentless. To build in the defense space, to build for the DoD, it is not easy. It is a challenge, and you have to just relentlessly attack every day to whatever your job is. If that's trying to do business development, you're constantly out there beating down doors. If you're building a product, you're constantly trying to find more efficient ways to do that, et cetera, et cetera. And so the saying is, someone closes the door in your face, go breach the wall. And while you're being relentless, though, you have to be ethical, which is our next value. We are in a very highly competitive industry. We compete fiercely, but we never break the law. We never compromise our ethics. Your reputation is everything in this industry, and we never want to give people a reason to question our reputation and our ethics. So I always force the team to be I always tell the team to be very, very ethical in everything we're doing. And then finally, this is a serious business. The drones we're building could have a munition strapped to them, and they could go and be used in war to go take out a bad guy. And that's a very, very serious thing that we take seriously. This is not silly. This is not a game. We are building weapons of war to hopefully deter our nation's enemies. But if need be, service members will use our products, our drones, to go and do battle with our adversaries and potentially take a life. And to that end, I expect everybody in the company to have a very, very high level of professionalism because it is such a serious business. Safety comes into play here. And if you're building a drone or a piece of equipment or a piece of software that ends up not performing well or being unsafe, that is unsatisfactory. And so I expect everyone to always be at a very, very high level of professionalism. So relentless, ethical, professional, wrapping all that up. I said we only have 3 values, but wrapping that all up is humility. Again, always be humble. There's always more to learn. We don't always have the best solution. We're always striving to get a little bit better, and to be humble in all those 3 values. It's very, very important. We actually do every week a value shout out. And so every week, values aren't just something we wrote on a slide somewhere we never talk about. We talk about it every week. And every week, either myself or one of the senior managers from a different section of the company will give a shout out of who led with that certain value, who embodied relentlessness in the previous week, who embodied something very ethical, or who was highly professional in the previous week. So there's tangible examples. And I don't just say words. It's Robert did something incredibly professional, and let me tell you exactly what he did. And I say, when I say professional, that's what I mean. And giving those concrete examples, I think has helped to instill that culture. And people talk a lot about the values. We like to say we hire and fire based off the values. Obviously, you have to be technically competent in your job, what you're doing, but you can't. You won't be able to run with us at the speed we're running if you don't embody those values.
I think it's one of the unique things that Andy's done from day one. I think we started, kicking off every meeting. It seems like almost every meeting, but certainly weekly with, recounting our values, talking about the rep. And even when we had 4 people on the team, it was a little bit awkward, at least for me. When there's 4 people directly, it's like being on this call right here. We're talking about, all right, you did something, ethical last week. Good job. And really pointing out what that was and commending each other. But now as the team is scaled, like to me, it was just great forethought by Andy and the team to constantly be bringing that up. And because you expect what you inspect, right? Like, so if you're inspecting this, like, it shows the expectations, and every single week, this is something that, we're inspecting across the team and reinforcing as being, important and critical to the franchise.
Yeah, I love that last one too. I know it kind of exceeds the 3, but the be humble, the no egos, leave your ego at the door. I think that's one that is super critical in startup world, because especially with tech too and engineers, right? It's easy to come across, savvy engineers that, think they're the shit, and they probably are the shit. But to bring that kind of mentality into the culture where you want to kind of lay it out where everybody's on this, level playing field, can easily screen folks out. They're like, oh, that's not really for me then. And to catch wind of that and to root that out early, I think is so valuable in early stage startup life, because one bad hire is just super timely. And
I think it's actually a byproduct and credit to Andy and the team. Like, I walk in here into the office and have this total inferiority complex. Like, I think everybody does, which is really, I think everybody to a man and woman here operates with a little bit of an inferiority complex when you consider the other people that are on the team, because there are literally some of the most decorated warriors in our country's history working at this company. And so if you think you're the shit, I guarantee you're not compared to a handful of people here. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, it's really remarkable. And the same thing on the technology side. And what's really interesting is the humility of these decorated warriors. They're the most humble people in the world, interestingly, and they have every reason to not be, but they exude that. And it's easy for them to be humbled, frankly, as you see the technology team and vice versa. And so I think it's a really interesting dynamic and culture that's been created. And I think something that, creates the conditions for future success.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I wanted to kind of, lean into that a little bit, but focus it and hone in a little bit on founder fit, because I think that's always fascinating too, how founders collaborate, how they complement one another or don't. You all have, somewhat different, but also very, some similarities in your background. What would you say are some of the common themes in your leadership style, and how you all complement one another when it comes to scaling Vector and leading under pressure?
I think at its core, the 4 co-founders all have this immense passion and love of country. Like, it's just rampant. I mean, we always, anything we do, we have the American flag on our shoulder. In our factory, we've got this massive American flag. And it's a constant sort of drive to build something that is meaningful to the country. And I think if you have, that's a fairly simple sort of common trait. It's a big, profound sort of common trait, but it's also simple. And I think it always kind of comes back to that. Most of our conversations always kind of lead their way back to hey, what's best for the nation? What's best for the warfighter? How is this supporting and making sure that we are defending the amazing values of our nation. And so we started there. Larsen and I had the benefit of knowing each other for a number of years before we started even talking about Vector. And so kind of having that common ethos, very, very similar personality and traits there. What we did was ensuring we rounded out our traits with, Matt Long, who's an incredible tactician and understands modern warfare, I think, better than anybody on the globe at this point. And then George Matus on the technology side. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a technical founder. And so striving to find a technical founder that still meets your values and your passion, your love for the nation and the military and country and technology, but also has the technical chops to sort of make up for that. We all four of us, I think, have very different leadership styles, but we all kind of fit together in a very unique way. And taking the time as co-founders to making sure that you understand each other, understand how you complement each other, where you overlap, where you're similar. As an example, George and I are similar in a lot of ways. And sometimes that's great and sometimes that's bad. And we lean on Larsen and Matt to ensure that, if George and I are too ambitious or too optimistic about a thing, Larsen kind of grounds us and brings us down to making sure that we're thinking about that very pragmatically. I think that is so important to have all co-founders on this level playing field, similar, but also different enough to complement each other for your blind spots.
I think oftentimes, and you probably see this in your roles, but a lot of people talk about co-founding teams and do they complement each other? Are they well-rounded? Absolutely. But I've seen enough co-founding teams that are on paper quite well-rounded and, in a number of conversations, quite well-rounded, and it seems logical, but they don't have that glue that transcends that, complementary or, different skill sets. And I don't know many founding companies that, frankly, many of the original meetings amongst us were, conducted walking Arlington National Cemetery. This isn't just like, I think there are some companies out there that wear Team USA on their sleeve as sort of a PR stunt, to be frank. And I think some probably won't be here in the future because it's pretty obvious it's a stunt to me. We did that. I didn't expect to even tell anybody about that. This is the first I've probably even told anybody about it. I'm doing it here, and for better or worse, because that's just something about like how we think about our country and, visiting the gravestones of the people that we served with that didn't come home. And so we understand the consequence. We understand the bravery that's required of our nation's elite, and we're honored to continue to support them.
Yeah, it's powerful. Thanks for sharing that. That's very cool. I'll close with, just a question around the outlook for Vector over the next 5 years of what success looks like for you all. So, what does success look like for Vector in the eyes of the country, not just, for investors?
Yeah. So we've got a lot of interesting things coming up. We've got a lot of really exciting announcements to make, both on the fundraising side, some additional products, and we'll release that all here in due time. But I think looking forward, what we are building is this attritable defense prime. We think attritable technology is the future of warfare. Attritable being this concept that Larsen described earlier about consumable technology that's at a very cost-efficient price point, so that if it's consumed, if it's used, if the drone doesn't come back, that's okay, because you can afford to have another one and another one and another one. And I think the nature of the drone or the piece of technology attritting gives you this very unique opportunity to improve on it once you replace it and provide it to the service member a better version of what you gave him before, what he previously attritted. And so we're looking at a horizontal expansion of a number of different systems that are serving to support both kinetic and non-kinetic operations for the American warfighter, our international partners and allies. And we're really excited about this concept of building out a series of products, but selling them as a service, always selling them as a service, almost a subscription of attritable technology. And so you can refresh it very, very fast, and you're not beholden to the procurement process. That's what we're building out for. And we're excited to make that a reality. At the end of all of this, what Vector is trying to do is in some ways trailblaze a new way of selling technology to the DoD. We've already started and seen a lot of early indications that we are starting to make some changes of how the DoD buys technology. But I love it in a number of years if we look back and say, like, this is the company that changed how the Defense Department buys technology.
Yeah. Yeah. God knows we need it. So appreciate the mission there and keeping up the good fight. We're going to wrap up on that note and just close with the final segment we call the 5-second scramble, which is just some rapid fire Q&A. 10 questions to each of you. Try to answer within 5 seconds. Sean, why don't you start with Larsen and I'll close with Andy.
All right, Larsen, you ready?
Send it.
All right. First question. What's one workout or PT routine from your Navy or swimming days that you do not miss?
Did a workout of 20 by 1,500 meter repeats. So 20 by 1 mile repeats swimming.
It sounds pretty easy, but I get it.
Yeah. I'd die if I did that today, man. I did a 3K recently, swim, and that's 2 of those. And I was like, no thanks, that's enough.
Yeah, sounds very rough. Number 2, what's the most surprising skill that you've had to learn in your career?
Mental pliability, just recognizing that you'll be more successful if you think you know less.
Okay. Number 3, what's the best under $20 piece of swag you've ever received or given?
Got one today. You got one today.
I don't know if that was under $20.
We'll call it under 20.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was 30. It gave me a hat, really nice hat. It's a branded Bills hat, American flag on it, Vector logo. It's a nice hat, but it might have been over $20.
Well, of course, the $20 threshold is for anyone who's doing work with the government. There's some rules around what you can and can't give. So, but all right, Vector hat.
Waiting for that Vector hat too, Andy.
Some company swag that's like a coffee mug and stuff like that. It's high quality. So like you get a nice coffee mug for $20 that has a company logo on it, and those are fun things for me because I love coffee.
What was your most unexpected? I really enjoyed that moment in your career.
Hell Week.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Turns out that was high quality fun.
It was. Yeah. I don't want to do it again, but yeah, it's like one of the things I'm most proud of. Yeah.
What's something random that you're surprisingly good at that has nothing to do with work?
I'm not good at too much, man. I don't know. You got the only things I'm good at out of the way. So I think I'm a good dad.
There you go. Excellent. What's one book or movie you'd recommend everyone read or watch?
I like the Dune series of movies.
Okay. All right. And then what's one book or movie that you enjoy, but that you would not recommend? Maybe a guilty pleasure.
The new Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay.
Jurassic Park 7 or whatever it is. You sort of have to.
All right, we're almost there, Larsen. Only a couple more here. What's your favorite everyday piece of technology that isn't a smartphone or a laptop or a drone? I'll add that as well.
The absence of it.
Nice. Nicely done.
That was deep.
And then
like that.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received? And you don't have to name the source.
To follow in somebody else's footsteps.
Yeah, there you go. Very motivating.
Your own path, or you're never going to be happy.
And then final question. This is a tradition on the pair program is what is a charity or philanthropic effort that's close to your heart that you really believe in?
There's too many to list off. The Navy SEAL Foundation is probably the one that unsurprisingly I'm the biggest proponent of.
All right. Outstanding. Thank you, Larsen. 10 for 10.
All right, Andy, you ready?
I don't know if I can follow that, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, you got this, man. If Vector were an animal, what animal would it be?
Lion.
Nice. What are some of the key kind of roles that you all are hiring for over the next month to 3 months?
A couple different sales roles and probably some high-end finance roles.
What's a lesson from special ops that applies to startup leadership?
Be humble.
What was your dream job as a kid?
I wanted to be a cop.
Nice.
Yeah, my uncle was a cop, and I wanted to be a cop like him.
Nice. What's some of the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
take care of your people. Kind of obvious. It applies in the military. It applies in the commercial world as well. You take care of your people, take care of you.
What's your morning routine look like?
I get up and I go straight to the gym. Don't pass go, just go straight there before anything else gets in the way. Yeah.
You brush your teeth before, or no?
I'll brush my teeth before, but that's about it. I try to make sure nothing else gets in the way. You start checking email and doing things like that, and you start ruining your routine there. So things go better for Vector when I get a workout.
Yeah. I hear you. Good stuff. What is the largest land animal you think you could take in a street fight?
Largest land animal in a street fight. I'd like to say like a bear, but I know that's not true. And I know I get my ass kicked. So I don't know. Maybe a dog, as long as it's not like a working dog. Yeah. I don't know.
All right, well said. What was the first job that you've ever had?
I was a golf caddy.
Oh, sweet. And last question, favorite piece of gear from your military days?
I just thought Peltors were the coolest. Like, I just loved how they protect your ears, but you can still talk through them, plug them in your radio. Like, I was just a fiend for Peltors. Favorite piece of gear, hands down.
Nice. All right, boys, that is a wrap. Thank you both for speaking up on such an important and timely topic and setting the stage for what success looks like in building a mission-focused startup in our country. So appreciate you all both joining us, and thanks for joining us on the pod.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.